Hello, this is Coran Latigua from Power and Pounders Drum Magazine, and I am here in Santa Ana, California, and I am here in my studio, my band studio, and the band is called For This Reason, and I am here. We were practicing. I was practicing, and we've been here for about two years now. And so, just it's a lockout facility. We're able to leave our equipment here, and we don't have to worry about tearing down or, having a block time. We can come any time of the day, any time of the night, and just play and practice and write. And it's good. It's good to have a lockout studio. It's a valuable thing, especially when you're writing and you are rehearsing and stuff like that. So anyway, I've been asked to shoot this video. Many of you have been wondering, we see your videos on YouTube and so forth, and everybody else is talking about how they got started playing drums. So what about you? What about you, man? Tell us a little bit about you, where you from, and what you do, and da. So I'm just taking this opportunity. Friday night, it's Friday night here in California, or wherever you are in the world, whatever time it is. Just taking this opportunity to kind of share a little bit about me and how I got started playing drums and how it all transpired throughout the years. Mainly, I started at age 11. I started playing drums around that time, and my first concert that I went to was the Jackson 5 and Ike and Tina Turner. It was 1976. I remember it. The Jackson 5 had opened up for Ike and Tina Turner, and saw Michael with the big old afros and shaking that head around, and I looked and I'm like, my eyes just kind of locked in on the drummer. And I'm like, man, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. There's my career right there. That's what I want to do at age 11. So I started, went home that night, and it was me and my sister and cousins. We all went. And so went home that night, and I'm just laying in bed, just thinking about the concert, and oh man, that was great, Michael, and back then they were, hey, Big C, easy as 1, 2, 3. So, but yeah, that's how it started. So I think I was in the 5th, 6th grade, and when I started venturing into music, and taking up an instrument, my mom, she wanted me to learn the violin, and I'm like, Mom, I don't want to learn the violin. That's for girls. That's a girl back then. We would say sissy. That's a sissy instrument. I don't want to learn that. And so I took up the trumpet and started playing the trumpet at the school band back in North Carolina. The Tar Heels, where I'm from, in Charlotte, and I grew up in Charlotte, and went to Oaklawn Elementary and played drums there. That was the year after. I started with the trumpet first, then I switched to drums. So let's rewind that. But started playing the trumpet in 6th grade, and I didn't really get into the trumpet. I don't know. But I wanted to form a band, And the bands that I used to get into back then, I mean, we talking, wow, 70, 76, 75, 76, 1976, 75. You know, I was listening to, you know, Casey and the Sunshine Band, Ohio Players, Earth, Wind and Fire, all these like funk bands that had horn sections in it. And I used to love the horns, you know. And I wanted to start a band just like, you know, Earth, Wind and Fire. And start a band, you know, with horn sections in it, just like Ohio Players and all these bands that had the horns. And two of my closest friends, they played trumpet too. I go, come on, man, let's start a band, you know, let's get a band going. No, I don't want to do a band, you know. No. I'm like, man, y'all sorry, man. Y'all don't want to do no band or nothing. So I ended up, I think, kept going on the trumpet, and I remember my first, it was me and my friend Jeff, and we did like a talent show. And I think we were in the 5th grade, and we played this song called "When the Saints Come Marching In" on the trumpet, and I'm trying to mimic it how it went. I don't think that was it. That's it. That was the only song I knew. You know why that was the only song I knew? Because it was all open C. Maybe CF or something like that. You know. So that was about the only song I knew. You know, when the Saints come marching in. So we played that song. We played that. It was just kept repeating. We played that song for like at least 5 minutes, you know, maybe even longer, because it was just kept going on. And I'm looking at him going, hey, when are we gonna stop, bro? You know, where's our break? And we just kept going. Finally, I think I just ended it. I just said, I'm done. Okay, we done. So we stopped and we bowed and all that kind of stuff. But that was my first thing in music, as far as, you know, trumpet. And then the following year, in 1976, you know, I did band class. And so my band director, Richard Maxwell, and Dr. Roy Anderson, they were my band teachers back then. And at the time, you know, they didn't have a drummer. And so, you know, the band teachers was asking around, and, hey, anybody want to try out for drums, and da-da-da-da. I'm like, yeah, I'll try out, you know. Didn't know nothing. Didn't know how to, you know, didn't know how to do anything. But for some reason, they had a little kit, and it was pretty cool. It was a little drum kit. And the band, the school band, we used to play like, you know, things like these TV shows back in the day. You know, Tony and Captain and Tennille, Love Will Keep Us Together. We played SWAT. We played Do the Hustle. Do the Hustle. So we played all these like TV sitcom theme songs, and I still remember a lot of them today. Just playing them, you know. But just playing drums, and we started playing the drums, and I started playing, and at the time, we didn't play the kit yet. At the time, it was just the bass drum and a snare drum. So my friend Frederick, he played the snare drum, and I played the bass drum, and it was kind of, we would play the theme songs, and my band teacher would give us the music. And we looked at it, and music was kind of boring. It was just boom, cha cha boom, cha boom, cha cha boom, cha boom, cha cha boom. It's like, we got to come up with something better than this, because, it was just boring. It was, and our band teacher would get mad, because we would just like make up our own beats, and we would make up our own beats, and it just sounded good. But our band teacher would get mad because, we wasn't following the music. We wasn't reading music. You guys not reading the music. We drums were in the back, the band. So he'll be like, conducting and this and that, and he'll look up, you guys not reading the music. You guys not reading the music. And me and Frankie would just come up with boom, bop, boom, boom, bop. I'll play that bass drum, boom, with the stick, with the mallet, with the stand, boom, God, boom, 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 a boom, boom. And Frederick, that here we set up we had like a little ride cymbal in the middle. And Frederick would play the ride in the snare. So we would just rock. Everybody in the band loved it. Everybody in the band, the clarinet section, the trumpet section, whatever, flukes, they all loved it. Trombones, they were just grooving to what we were playing instead of boom, cha cha, boom, cha, boom, cha, So, but we kind of got away with it because even though he was mad inside, he liked it deep down inside. He was mad on the outside, but he liked it deep down inside. He tried to pretend he was, not digging it, but I could tell he was liking it. He was liking it. He knew I was kind of couple times bobbing his head, But so we did that, and we used to go on these like little school concert tours and play at all the elementary schools and stuff like that. So and then I think we had another talent show that year too, in 1976. And I played drums that year. First year I played trumpet. Second year I played drums. And my first drum set was, I used to get those J.C. Penney catalogs. You guys remember those? And the first thing I looked at was, I would turn the page, boom, drum set. That's the first page I go to, drum set. So I would look at the drums. So my dad, he brought me my first drum kit. And I remember it. It was blue Sparkle. How many of you guys remember the Sparkle drum sets? And actually, I saw one at the NAMM show this past year, this last couple of months. And it was blue. And it's funny because it kind of brought, when I saw the kit at the NAMM show, I go, man, that just brought back memories, because that was my first drum kit. So I had a blue Sparkle drums kit, 5-piece. So I brought it home, put it together, and put it in my room, put it against the bed, and I pretty much, I would have to say, I didn't take formal lessons or anything. It's a gift from God, and I just started putting the headphones on and just start playing, just some of the bands I liked back then, Lakeside, Kool and the Gang, anything Motown, oh man, Bootsy Collins, I can go on and on, that whole funk 70s era, Lakeside, I think I said Lakeside, Cameo, I think that kind of got a little later on as I started developing. But, I started just kind of just playing, and just not really knowing what was what, but just kind of just playing. And so I didn't really start taking it like serious until I got a little older, until I went to junior high school, or back then it was called junior high school. Now it's called middle school. And so I started taking drums back then and playing in the pep bands and stuff. But then I played sports. I played football, basketball, and in junior high school. So, that's where it all started with me in the beginning. And I think as I got into, started getting more serious, I started playing, a little bit more funk stuff and R&B, just that was my first genre, was R&B, funk, the whole Motown sound. I grew up with that, and so that to me, that's where my roots started, with drums. Just like a lot of other my friends, that's just pretty much where it started. And as I got older, in my late teens, went to college, went to 3 colleges, I graduated from West Charlotte. I didn't play drums in high school because I played sports. I played football and basketball for West Charlotte, WC, so I didn't really play at that time. But then when I graduated in 1982, that's when I, went to college and started playing in the pep band, doing basketball season and stuff like that. And so I think there was a lot of bands that used to come to the school, and I went to Appalachian, and there was a lot of bands that used to come, and I used to go, man, these guys, this is my whole mindset. This is what I want to do. And I was like 21, somewhere around in there, and it was 1983. Saw these bands coming, and I was like, man, I was talking to a lot of the bands. I'm like, man, you guys play around different colleges and stuff, and so they were telling me, you should form a band and get one in school, and so, but it never happened, and then I think in 1984 is when I started to go, you know what? I studied psychology. I didn't finish. So it's like, psychology. What I'm going to do with that? And it's like, it just wasn't for me. So I told my mom, you know what? I'm not gonna go back to school. I want to pursue music. And, so I got a little job during the summer, and then I worked during the fall and stuff, and I on the weekends I would cut grass, and I would save up cut like 10 yards on Saturday. I get up Saturday morning, cut yards, and do all this yard stuff and chores around the house, and I would get allowances. So when I got paid for doing cutting yards and stuff, and so I spent every time I got money, I went to the music store. At the time, I had a little 5-piece drum set. I look in the catalog, JCPenney. Look at JCPenney catalog, see what I wanted to buy next. So I would go and then they didn't have what I wanted, so I went to the music store. And by that time, I was driving. This is high school, so by that time I was driving and stuff. So I get my cutting grass money. As soon as I get my money, go cleaned up from washing the cars and cutting grass, and then I go to the music store. Stay in the music store for hours, man, just walking around and looking at the drums, and then I brought some sticks with the money I had from cutting grass and so forth. And then the next week, a week after that, I get like $20, $40 more. And at the time, stuff was little. You can afford it. I get some new drum heads, $5 or something, $10. Put those on there, and then just gradually started adding, to things. But yeah, that's that. You know, thinking back to that as I'm talking, you know, it's just bringing back memories. You know, it's like, man, you're in your room and it's like, you know, you're just practicing. You know, and like I say, I did sports, so I went to sports camps and stuff like that. But music was always, it was always there. And I think when I decided to leave college and pursue music more, you know, you're gonna get that from family. Oh, you know, you should, you know, it's a dream, da 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 da. You know, and that's this part of it. You know, you're gonna get that. That's just know it, that people that love you, they want you to do your best, but you have a heart to do something else, and you know, it may not be what they want. They still love you, and you go pursue something else, you know, and chances of making it, whatever making it is, you know, we talking back in the, you know, 70s and 80s, and then when the late 80s came, I think that's when I really started to get more serious in playing and learning and stuff, and getting more, a little bit more technical. You know, I love the funk and the R&B and the rap and all that, but then I started getting into more rock type style drumming, and just learning, you know, bands like Night Ranger, Loverboy. I even went to a Rick Springfield concert, Rush, I think Kiss. I went to a couple of Kiss concerts. You know, I started getting into that genre of music in the mid 80s. And then I got my first big professional drum kit, a brand name drum kit, which is what you see behind me. It's a Ludwig kit. And I've had this kit for, I got it in 1985. And I've had this kit since then. And you know, I don't need another kit. I don't need another kit. You know, of course, obviously, you know, I've always played with Zildjian cymbals and so forth. And but I've had this kit since 1985. And at the time, it was a 10-piece drum kit. And I will stand up here and let you kind of look at it a little bit. It was a 10-piece drum kit at the time. But, you know, it was a double bass kit, chrome, and so forth. And, you know, I started pursuing, this was a $5,000 drum kit at that time. This was 1985. So, yeah, that's when I started working at real jobs and, you know, getting some real money, not cutting grass money. But you know, to be able to afford it, because when you're doing something that you love, you got to get serious about it. You got to get the equipment, and sometimes when you're pursuing something as a career, you wanna have the right stuff. And so I went out and got this, because back then, you know, when MTV was MTV, you know, at the time. You know, I used to watch a lot of the rock videos, you know, back then. We're talking in the mid 80s now. So we've gone from elementary, junior high, high school, and then after college. That's pretty much where the professionalism and pursuing it real started for me. And I was probably around 21 at that time, 22. And so, you know, I went out and brought this kid, and I remember when I picked it up from the music store, I was like, oh man, I couldn't wait to get home, you know, and just tune it and test it out and all that kind of stuff. And I put it in my room. And the funny thing about it is, you know, nobody complained. The neighbors didn't complain. You know, I even did this with the kit before that, the J.C. Penney kit. The neighbors didn't complain. I would play, with the window open, and if it I always, like I tell my drum students, if it sounds good, the neighbors are not gonna complain. But if it sounds like kapu papu kap, you're gonna get some complaints if you're playing at home. But if you're sounding good and you're grooving and you jamming and the neighbors are hearing it, they're not gonna call the cops. So just for you students out there, especially you young ones, play good, and sometimes even your own family members might go, oh wow, that sounds pretty good. So, but I didn't get any complaints. When my mom would leave, she would go shopping somewhere. I'd take the drums out of my room and put them in the living room. And we had this big long TV console thing with stereo and a TV, and I would get all my records and put them in there and put the records on and start playing. And I had this like big 10-piece drum kit. When she would leave, I would go in the living room. I would go in the den, and I would set it up there and just play off of that, because the stereo in the living room was a lot better than the one in my room. So I would go there and just play, And so, but it was a pain in the butt taking it back to my room. She the neighbors didn't complain at all, so they thought it was a radio, which is a compliment. But so in 1985, like I said, I got this kit, and I think in '86 is when I started answering ads. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, I never got into a band in Charlotte. I played around with some guys, but they weren't serious, none of them were like serious. And after watching, MTV at that time from '81 to, '85 in North Carolina, rock, I just got into it. And my first rock album that I got, I started getting into more metal, heavy metal. My first rock album was Def Leppard. It was the Pyromania album. And when I saw that video, Rock of Ages and Foolin', oh man, I'm just like, I'm hooked. I'm like, man, what is this sound? I mean, just jing, jing, jing. And, Def Leppard, man, that album, to this day, 2019, is probably the top, at least one of the top metal albums that I feel that you can't beat it. I mean, that Pyromania album, man, it's just, even to this day, I listen to it, I'm going, man, there's some good stuff on there, and so that was kind of like the start for me as far as metal is concerned, hearing Def Leppard. Then I started getting into bands like Quiet Riot and, Rat and all these metal bands, and then, I don't know, I got to back up a bit because, well, no, that's about right, yeah. In 1986, I moved to Wisconsin, lived in Milwaukee. I had answered an ad at one of the magazines that I used to subscribe to. It was called Music Connection. It's still going on today. And so I used to subscribe to that magazine. I used to see them all the time in the stores, and I used to look at the ads and see if any bands needed a drummer. So I answered this one ad, and it was a band that was looking for a drummer, and they lived in Wisconsin, in Milwaukee. And this is 1986. And nothing was going on in Charlotte at the time. Music, there was a couple of bands that I liked that I went and saw. A band called Sidewinder. Gosh, man, the Vandals. You know, it was just a couple of bands that I liked. I used to see all the time. But there was no rock bands. There was no like metal bands like I like what I saw on MTV. So I answered this ad in Wisconsin and flew out there to meet with the band. It was a female lead singer, and she wanted to form like, I don't even know what style. I don't even know what it was. It was a metal band, but I think it was a bit like something like Warlock band. She wanted to be that type of a band. And if you know who Warlock was, they had the singer was German. I forgot her name, Dior or something like that, Pritchard. But and Warlock was good too. I had their albums. But so she wanted to form a band like that, and I'm like, okay, cool. I know who Warlock is. So I ended up moving to Wisconsin in 1980. That summer of 1986 in June. You know, loaded up the truck and moved to Wisconsin. Not Beverly Hillbillies, you know. Loaded up the truck and moved to Beverly. That was later. That was like way later. So anyway, I moved to Wisconsin, and you know, unfortunately, that I ended up staying in Wisconsin for 4 years, and that band never really panned out. It didn't do anything. So I stayed there. I didn't want to go back to Charlotte. There was no need. Once I left, and so, you know, my mom, she wanted me to kind of experience the world, so to speak. And I was 22 at that time, and you know, I just didn't move out of the house. I moved to a completely different state. I didn't move out of the house to go pursue this music career. I moved to a state, you know, to a completely different state. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anybody. So I left North Carolina, moved to Wisconsin in 1986. Lived there 4 years, you know, of course, worked and all that kind of stuff. Still pursuing the music. And then when that didn't pan out, you know, I ended up going to Vegas. So I went to Las Vegas. I think I left Wisconsin in, actually it'd be 20 years. 20 years in May, this coming May, 1989. I left Wisconsin. And yeah, 20 years. So, you know, that's you know, that's hard to believe. No, actually 30 years. Yeah. 30 years. I'm sorry. 20 years would be 99. Yeah, 30 years. So 1989. Wow. It's a long time. So I left Wisconsin, and then moved to Las Vegas. And I lived in Vegas. Went to go visit, and I always went to visit first before I moved because I wanted to check out the place. I didn't know nothing about Vegas, nothing at all, and so but Vegas, for some reason, I didn't want to come to LA at that time. LA was just, I don't know, back in the 80s, it was just like flooded. It was just flooded. And I mean, it's just flooded. Flooded with musicians. And, you know, I didn't want to go to LA. I decided to go to Vegas. And Vegas was still kind of, you know, the whole casino thing and all that kind of stuff. You know, it was still strong in the casinos, but I didn't play in the casinos. I went to go join a band, or form a band. And so I moved to Vegas in, I think, May of 1989. And lived there for 7 years, from 1989 to 95. And in Vegas, I played in a band called Legacy. And, you know, Rick Browning, Joe D'Angelo, Pete Sardana. So if you guys are out there, I would love to see you guys. Love to connect. You know, but yeah, that was we started in the 90s, like right when that year changed in 1990, and MTV was kind of still playing Headbangers Ball every Saturday. I used to watch Headbangers Ball every Saturday night. I used to watch Headbangers Ball. Now, at the time, I don't know if you can go to my Facebook page, Power and Pounders, Facebook.com, Power and Pounders. At the time, I had long hair. Okay, believe it or not, I had long hair, and a lot of people say, "Oh, he looks like Milli Vanilli." You guys remember Milli Vanilli? And so I used to think that was like an insult. I'm thinking, I used to get Rick James all the time. But Milli Vanilli. So when I saw Milli Vanilli on MTV, I think they were German and from England. And I'm thinking, who is Milli Vanilli? Because I used to get all these people, oh man, that's Milli Vanilli. You look like Milli Vanilli. Because I used to have long braids and stuff. And I never knew who Milli Vanilli was until I saw him on MTV. When I saw him on MTV, I'm like, all right. All right. All right, okay. And mainly the girls will say this, okay, all right, I get it now, see. Because they used to say, oh, Milli Vanilli, that's those guys are cute. And I'm like, I don't know who no Milli Vanilli is, so. But then when I saw him on MTV, I'm like, okay, hey, all right, I get it. But I used to have long braids at the time, and because being a rock drummer, you could be a rock drummer now, and be bald and so forth. But back then, man, if you didn't have that look, no matter how good you played, you wasn't getting any gigs because you didn't have the look. So, I used to have the braids and stuff, and I let my hair grow out like afro, and I would straighten it, get a relaxer and just straighten it, and it grew, and then I'll put braid it. I'll go to the hair salon there and braid it, have them braid it. So I had, if you look on my Facebook page, you'll see some old pictures of me with long hair. I took those pictures later in the 90s, but I was all image, man. It was all about image back then, especially being a rock drummer, and I started getting into like more serious metal, Priest, and it's funny because this is just my opinion, but it's funny when I listen to the metal, because I listen to different genres of rock. I like progressive metal, the Dream Theaters and the Fates Warnings and all these progressive metal bands. Sabotage. How many of you guys remember Sabotage? I love Sabotage, and I think Sabotage is one of my favorite bands. And I saw Sabotage twice, and so but like I say, I kind of coming from the '80s metal, and then you kind of got into that whole, late early '90s, the Dream Theaters and bands like that, more progressive metal. And that's, I guess for me, that's where the big kits came in, the big drum sets came in, because I'm just a big drum kit guy. I hate going to a rock concert and the drummer's got a 4-piece. It just doesn't fly. It just doesn't fly. I'm like, dang. When you hear it on the album, it's like, man, that's just sick. But you go to a concert and he's got a 4-piece drum kit. I'm not saying you gotta have like a 20-piece kit, but man, you're a rock drummer. You're a rock drummer. And when you're a rock metal drummer, that's just my opinion. I could be completely wrong. That's just my opinion. I just feel if you're a metal rock drummer, you gotta have a big kit. I'm not saying you gotta have a 20-piece drum kit, but at least 8. You know, and some of the drummers I've seen, you know, they do have pretty sizable kits, and they do play them. You know, I mean, like I say, this was a 10-piece drum kit, but I cut it down, so now it's, you know, I would say now it's probably a 7-piece now. I've added some timbales, but yeah, it's a 7-piece, you know, 7-8-piece. And I had, the rack was huge. I don't know if you remember a band called Dokken back in the 80s. Mick Brown, he was one of my influences. He had this like sick Tama rack. You know, I mean, man, when I first saw that video, what was the video he did? Man, what was the video? In My Dreams. If you ever see that video, look at this kit. I had that kit. It was a Tama at the time. Tama had a big Tama rack kit, and I remember when I got it in Vegas, when I lived in Vegas, and at the time that kit was $2,000. It was $2,000 at the time, and I'm going, man, I gotta have that. So the band I was in, we would call, like I said, we would call Legacy, and we were kind of like a Queensryche, Whitesnake type style. Our vocalist, he had like a 5-octave, you know, Jeff Tate type of range, and you know, because we were into that progressive style at the time, but we, you know, we kind of had a, you know, the guitar. Joe, he was into Megadeth, Metallica, Slayer. He was in a lot of stuff too. So we kind of had that progressive / metal. We can go heavy, we can go melodic, we could go off timing a little bit. So and we started in Vegas in the early '90s. We started getting a lot of popularity. We were like the basement tape of the month at one time, and this is like right when Slaughter came out with Up All Night, and you know, when they came out with that, because at the time, you know, locally, you didn't, at least in Vegas at that time, it wasn't a whole lot of rock bands. And so at the time, it was us, Legacy, a band called Cowboy, and a band called Painted Tears, I think it was. And we had opened up for those guys, and I think there was another band too. I can't think of who they were. There was another band called Apocrypha, and they were more like a Queensryche type style too. So, and I forgot the other band as well that was popular. There was probably about 4 or 5 bands at that time that were really doing something in the whole Vegas scene. And so, you know, we did a demo. A guy named Brent Henson produced it, and we got the basement tape of the month, radio station. I think I even still got that cassette tape that we did with the interview on it. And yeah, we pushed it, man. You know, we pushed it. So, but yeah, it and I think professionally that's when it kind of all started, you know, going. When Legacy started happening, we had to change the name, though, because Testament at the time, a band called Testament at the time had the name Legacy, so we couldn't really do anything as far as legally promote it because Testament had that name. So, which is another good band that I like. So fast forwarding a little bit from Vegas. Then I think when I left Vegas, I started. You know, Legacy broke up. I think we broke up in '93, somewhere around in there, and you know, wanted to get into something more, a little bit more professional. So at that time, 94, 95 came around, and I'm looking again at Music Connection magazine, which is still going on today. You know, for ads, drummers, drummers wanted. And I saw this band from Huntington Beach, California, and they were kind of like a Skid Row-ish type style. And I love Skid Row, Skid Row. I think Sebastian Bach has one of the most dynamic vocals in metal, especially, the first album, Skid Row, their debut was off the charts. Slave to the Grind, that was another one. I just love his vocal. I love his dynamics and his phrasing, and I think that's what really made Skid Row. And I love the guitar. I love everything about, especially that album. That was a good album, Slave to the Grind. But yeah, but the band that I joined in Huntington, we were kind of like a Skid Row-ish type style. They were. And I'm like, okay, cool, it gave me an idea of who they were, So they sent me a tape, and, tapes were big back then, okay? So when you hear me say tapes, cassette tapes, they were big back then. So I listened to them and went for an audition, and I ain't forgot the name, I forgot the name. But we jammed for like maybe, this is in 85. We jammed for about maybe a year, writing stuff, but nothing really took off. And here I am. I'm out here in LA now. Okay, I made it to LA. I made it to California. So now that I'm out here, now I'm starting to meet some people, see who's out here, see what's LA all about at that time, in the early 90s, when actually the metal scene at the time was kind of going down. If you guys remember, even before I left Vegas, the metal scene was kind of like, early 90s, 91, 92, 93, the metal scene was kind of like, it was just kind of going down. And then the grunge scene came in. You had Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and all these completely different Nine Inch Nails. Just on and on and on. And the metal scene was just kind of going down. It was still there, but it wasn't like it was. And I think a lot of that had to do with MTV. They gone. Headbangers Ball, they started fading out. So a lot of these bands that I was into, and the thing is with Headbangers Ball, I used to get into bands that wasn't as popular. I used to get into bands that, bands like Keel and, there was just so many bands, Leatherwolf, bands that I saw on MTV, that they were up there, but they wasn't like the Motley Crues or the Whitesnakes or the Guns N' Roses or, the Bon Jovis or the Warrants or any of those bands that were up there, but then you had a lot of other bands that were like, just, they were there, but they, for some reason, they just didn't get up to that point, and I got them off of Headbangers Ball, and that's how I got a lot of my albums off of Headbangers Ball. Winger, they were pretty big. Winger was pretty big. But yeah, so, mid 90s come, metal was kind of dying out, now I'm, don't get me wrong, even though I kind of went to a different genre because I love the intensity of metal. I love the sweat. I love to pound. That's why I called the YouTube channel, the magazine Power and Pounders, because in metal you pound, you just pound, you hit things, and you just go completely nuts, And so that's where the name comes from. But it could be for a jazz drummer. It could be for a funk drummer. It could be for a Latin drummer. It doesn't matter. If you're a drummer, you're pounding pounders. Okay, so let's clear up the name and explain where the name came from. But as far as like, just playing, I met a lot of people in LA, that were up there, but it's a tough market, and then it's still who and yeah, you may, I'm not a big media guy. I'm just now getting into the whole YouTube thing and putting videos up, mainly interviews. Like I say at the beginning, you've seen some of my interviews that I've done, but that's mainly what it's about. Just interviewing people and how they got started. But then when I moved to California, late 90s, I would say mid 90s, around 96, 97, I started getting depressed, because at the time, I got tired of doing playing in all these bands, and I formed a couple of bands here in the LA area, Orange County area, and some of them worked out okay. But then I started getting depressed and going, man, when is no matter what I did, no matter what type of equipment, you practice 5 hours a day, that's pretty much what it was. Even the bands that I was in, we would practice every day like work. We would practice from 6 to like 11, every day. And then in the days that the band didn't practice, I still practiced, for 3-4 hours a day, just every day. So when you've had that discipline in practicing, you're gonna see some results. And as they say, practice makes perfect. But I don't practice as much today as I did back then, in my 20s and 30s, and maybe twice a week now, not as much. But when I do practice, it's still 3-4 hours. It's not like every day, but when I do practice, we talking at least 3 to 4 hours. Maybe 15-20 minute break. And when I'm taking my break, I'm always got rhythm in my head. I'm always coming up thinking, oh man, so I would come back and mimic that beat that I had in my head and try to put it on the drums, so, but, so at the time, I was kind of getting depressed, and a lot of stuff was going on, personally, and, I think in 1997 is when, I went to church, and, a friend of mine, she took me to church, and I was listening to this pastor, and his name was Greg Laurie, and he used to be at Calvary Chapel in Costa Mesa for years on Monday nights. And so I would go there and just listen to him, and at the time I wasn't a Christian or anything, but I would just, because I liked the way he presented the message, and at the time, he still is big, but Monday night at Calvary, it's like, you had to get there early to get a seat. That's how big it was Monday nights. And so, but he kept talking about how Jesus can fulfill that void that a person is missing in their life. And so I'm listening to it, and like I say, I had suicide thoughts. Which is completely different than actually going through the motions, because actually it's worse, because when you're going through it, when you're having these thoughts, that's the first thing you think about is killing yourself. Okay. No matter what, you can have bad relationship, financial problems, job, career, anything that doesn't go through, that's the first thing you think about. And so that's where I was, music career. It was like this. Financial, it was like this, up and down. Yeah, I worked. I maintained a job. I wasn't one of these type of musicians that didn't work. And, I worked. I did my whole, morning job and afternoon job, and then I would do music in the evening. You got to work. Yeah, you want to pursue your goal and pursue your dreams, but you still got to work. So I wasn't one of these type of musicians that didn't go out and didn't work. I worked. But, but even pursuing the whole career, it was like, man, you seeing all these you seeing people doing their thing, and it just kind of got depressing. Then, but when I heard him say how Jesus can fulfill a void in that person's life, no matter what you try to search for, no matter what you try to do, you'll never be happy at it. That's the thing. All the money, all that kind of stuff, yeah, it's good for a while, but you'll never be satisfied. You will always want something. So, but when he said that Jesus can fulfill that void and so forth, I'm like, and then the thing is, I knew Jesus died on the cross. I knew that. I believed in God growing up. My best friend, his dad was a pastor. We used to go to his church when I was growing up. But see, at least for me at that time, I didn't know anything about the Bible. I didn't know nothing about the Bible.